While Optimus Prime and Megatron are the undisputed leading faces of Transformers, part of what makes this franchise such a success is the timelessly notable supporting cast that flanked these two leaders. Among those characters is the indomitable Decepticon communications officer known as Soundwave. On this episode of The Evolution of Toys, we go through the key incarnations of Soundwave in my personal collection, namely his Generation 1 figure, his Masterpiece appearance, and his War for Cybertron Netflix release. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, this is Ken with Toy Connections. If you would like to see more figure reviews, figure comparisons, toy histories, collection footage, and toy insights in general, please be sure to hit subscribe, click that notification bell, and press like. Now, if you grew up in the 1980s, then you'll certainly remember the onerous task of fast-forwarding or rewinding your cassette player to your favorite track. A bit less convenient than the on-demand chapter selection that we get on some of our favorite streaming services today. And even if his alternate transformation mode is long outdated and time capsule to the golden years of the 80s and early 90s, it doesn't stop Soundwave from being the standard bearer in loyalty among enemy henchmen, as he was probably Megatron's most useful subordinate with how the cassettes in his chest could transform into a small gang of robots to even the sides against the Autobots. And while I am aware that he's had some really great releases that I won't cover in this video, I've mostly picked the three versions today for discussion because they fill the respective gaps in my toy collection. Naming them again, the G1, which fills the gap for vintage nostalgia, Masterpiece for high-end figure representation, and the War for Cybertron Netflix toy for modern mainline releases. And beginning with the nostalgia factor, naturally we should start with the 1984 release Generation 1 figure. This is one that I had as a kid, though I didn't get it till a little while after its initial release. I think it was 1986. Actually, I do remember that my Aunt Christine, who was living with us at the time, bought the figure and left it downstairs in the office area of our home, fully transformed out of package with his accessories on and Buzzsaw on his arm. I think she knew that the 4-year-old kid in 1986 would be impressed by this, needless to say. So, being mesmerized by the character that I clearly recognized from the cartoon, soon enough Soundwave made his way into my toy drawers, and so that leaves me with this great memory of growing up with this particular figure. I'm glad I did because of its iconic stature. Aunt Christine is actually subscribed to this channel, so this is my way of giving thanks and a nice hello to her to let her know that she contributed to my fond memory of Transformers. Now, I should probably point out that Soundwave's predecessor in the Microchains line was the figure known as Cassette Man, a figure of the same mold but with the words Cassette Man written across the lower part of his torso, and this figure was reworked into Soundwave for the purpose of the Generation 1 series. What makes Soundwave stand out among the Generation 1 toys is his advanced level of articulation compared to other figures in the line. I do understand though that this was probably due to the nature of how he transforms and how his legs and arms tuck into the tape deck mode, which resulted in a lot of well-placed joints, but as a kid it made no difference to me. I was able to pose him more easily than the other Generation 1 figures, which is always a plus. He was also reissued a few times, making it less difficult for new collectors to add him to their toy shelves. While he did come with Buzzsaw in his original box set, it is curious how this happened because Buzzsaw got less screen time than his cassette counterparts. Laserbeak was usually the bird of choice in the cartoon, though Ravage, Rumble, and Frenzy of course also got good screen time as well. I should probably point out that as a kid, I also did happen to have Blaster, so these two made for natural enemies in my living room battles. I'd come to learn years later that Soundwave and Blaster would fight to the death in the Japanese-only Headmasters cartoon of 1987, and would later find themselves remade as Sound Blaster and Twincast respectively. And while the G1 toy stands with my vintage display, the year 2013 brought a joyful memory from my collecting days with the release of the MP13 Soundwave. This one came packaged with Laserbeak as well as some really cool accessories including an Energon cube and a scaled down Megatron in gun mode for Soundwave to use, though admittedly the Hasbro release later on would feature him in a reworked box set with most of the other cassettes. What I like personally about the Masterpiece line in my own experience is that by the time it hit its full stride, I was most of the way through finding the pieces for my G1 collection that I wanted, other than a few select ones here and there that I'm still grabbing today. So Masterpiece did kind of bring me back to the beginning of collecting the characters all over again, and made for a very interesting time not only hunting for figures again, but also pre-ordering, waiting, and later opening the other Decepticons such as Megatron to put him on display with Soundwave. Hey, what can I say? I like my Transformers. And now they've yet to make an official release of Masterpiece Blaster, but this Keith's Fantasy Club or KFC version and his cassettes do make for an iconic battle sequence with Soundwave and his team. Overall, The Masterpiece figures make for the most impressive display when it comes to crossover between cartoon accuracy as well as what we hoped our toys would look like as kids. Also when it came to body proportion and just pure wow factor. The unfortunate thing about Masterpieces though is the price point that the figures have to come out at due to their scale, the detail, the fact that they're imported from overseas all adds to the rising prices of this figure, not to mention the oil shortage resulting in a plastic shortage and the price of plastic going up, as well as the rising price of labor overall. Now, when the Masterpieces were coming out, I wasn't super fond of the other modern offerings and other Transformers sublines, so that's why this Soundwave figure, when it came out, was really special to me and has only gotten more important to my collection over time. Having said that, with the inception of the Siege line of Transformers, I did feel that modern Transformers improved quite a bit. This release in the War for Cybertron Netflix line, in my opinion, was the best release of Soundwave since the aforementioned Masterpiece version. The set came packed with Ravage as well as Laserbeak, and so I felt that it gave some good value for its price, seeing how fondly many of us remember the three of them together in the Sunbow animated cartoon series. The good thing about this Netflix figure, as with many of the War for Cybertron and Studios 86 figures, is the original screen accuracy and the fact that we're getting some good detail for prices that are lower than that of the Masterpiece line. I won't say they're cheap because they're not, but I'm just pointing out that they are lower priced than Masterpieces, and I have seen some friends abandon the Masterpiece line altogether in favor of these latest modern offerings, and honestly, I can't say that I blame them. It is tempting to keep collecting this scale of figures though, seeing as most of the Decepticons in the first 3 seasons have already been released, thus giving me the opportunity to collect as if I was back at square one yet again and recreating the excitement of chasing figures down. That said, this Netflix version was a bit more difficult to find than others when it first came out, but at least in my area of Canada, I did notice that they started to turn up a little more often a few months after its initial release. In any case, here he is. So however you guys choose to collect, I really wanted to take the opportunity to share with you the Soundwave figures in the 3 main Transformers lines that are in my personal collection. The first few years of characters will always remain a staple in my childhood, and because their coolness factor never seems to age, they become a staple in my adulthood as well. In the end, the evolution from Generation 1 to any and all modern Transformers lines, including Masterpiece, War for Cybertron, and other sub-series, seems to find itself in a constant cycle on the pegs and shelves at retail stores to this day. And whether you choose to just have one Soundwave, or several, or even none of him in your personal collection, I've done my best here to share the story of how I collected, and hopefully some of you can relate. After all, that's what this channel is about sharing, relating, and continuously collecting the characters we've come to adore over the decades. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please check out some of my other videos here. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Otherwise, keep things fun, and I'll see you again soon with some more of my favorite toys. Take care.